of Public Education and Advocacy at NACADA. Welcome, madam.
Thank you.
Wow, we've seen a lot of things, and even before we touch on a report that actually all the media houses, I can tell you for a fact, on Monday we did write a lot of reports regarding the status of drugs and substance abuse among primary school pupils in Kenya. And something that we have been talking with you is that you've told us that that report was done in 2018 and released in 2019. Can you just a brief overview of the same?
Okay, thank you. I would say that this is actually the second report that we have done, because in 2016 we had a study that was done for, again, establishing the status of alcohol and drug abuse in secondary schools. So that was done in 2016. So this is what informed the primary school survey, because some of the findings from that survey is that substance use actually begins earlier than high school. So it necessitated us to go back to, do another survey, and you can see we did it in collaboration with CUPRA, so that we establish what is the status in primary schools. Yeah, so from the surveys, what we do, we find out in terms of knowledge level, are students aware of the substances, the various substances of abuse, and then also find out if they have ever used. We'd also want to find out if they are currently using, or when was the last time they ever used. Yeah. So you see that then informs the prevalence that has been in the stations for a while. But other than that, we also look at the risks. What are the risk factors and what are the protective factors? Because when you talk about alcohol and substance use, the drivers are about the risks. What is it that then motivates young people to begin to use drugs? Yeah.
And of course, we have a lot of time to talk about this report and what is currently happening in the country. I do remember, perhaps we can start with what CS Magoha talked about. He knows very well that there's student unrest. He knows very well that, of course, students have not been in school for the last 9 months. And there's something that he said that, of course, raised a lot of questions, and, of course, some supported, and some talked about no, we cannot go back to this. And that was the introduction of corporal punishment. And I remember, I think it was in January the 28th this year, he talked about introducing caning in school. I do remember I cleared high school more than 20 years ago, and when I was in school, the msita was the 6 strokes of the cane were very, very, very rampant in schools for even very, very small offenses like noise making. But Basic Education Act Section 36 did abolish corporal punishment in schools, and even talked about 100,000 shillings fine for any teacher that beats up a student, or an imprisonment of 6 months. But CS Magoha, I don't know whether my director can find that clip so that we may hear exactly what Magoha talked about. But as a clip is being prepared, kindly comment on that.
Well, now I know you'd want to turn back to where you have been, because when you listen to the debate, there is more of I went through this and it is what shaped me. Another school of thought will be no, that cannot happen anymore. Yeah. And for sure, it's not just the Education Act, but also the Children Act. That is what also necessitated the abolishing of caning, because you see that is considered cruelty, and it actually violates the rights of the children. Yeah. So really, I don't know if caning would actually help, because you see that's actually a form of violence. Yeah.
And indeed, because some are talking about a kid who is over 7 years old, when you talk about caning, that is already something that will not shape that kid. And of course, we've seen our parents, even when growing up, they were really used the cane, but nowadays that has changed. Away from that, looking at the cases of indiscipline, unrest during our time were unheard of. We only used to hear about the University of Nairobi rioting. I remember Technical University then was Kenya Polytechnic and the Kenya Institute of Mass Communication. We had some issues, and perhaps they go throw stones in town. That is the only time that we were hearing about corporal punishment back then. But the matrix has changed. We don't hear about universities in roads, but now we are seeing children as young as primary school children turning on their teachers. Is it the society or bad parenting, as Magoha said?
Yeah, I would say that it's a combination of many things, including the bad parenting. And if you look at the survey, again, that came out from, particularly from the secondary school survey, because it showed that in as much as the school environment is no longer drug-free, initiation of alcohol and even drug use begins at home. Yeah. So it is over the holidays, it is at home, so it means that there are things that are happening in the home environment that then contributes to the substance use. So there is that heightened use. And probably if you look at maybe in the olden days, again, you did not have as much substance use, or there was some kind of regulation. There is also the pressure that comes from being a student. You know, I don't know 20 years ago how competitive it was compared to now. And when you talk about you only saw university students, even then you will see a pattern. When were they going on strike? You can be sure that exams are close. Yeah, so that is actually a stressor. So if you look at our current situation, what is happening? Children have been home for a long time. Of course, there are many people who tried to have them do online, which you know does not work. Yeah, you know, if you are behind a screen, chances that you are logged in and absent are also very high.
Indeed.
Yeah, and we also know that not many children went through that kind of environment. So it means that so many of them did not look at their books. And even if they did, what was also happening in the environment? You find that there was a lot of uncertainty, because one time the CS for education would say the schools are going to close, the next time they are going to open, the next time it says 2020 is lost, the next time, well, we are going to open. You know, that also causes uncertainty among the learners. So, you know, they give up.
Yes.
And so when suddenly you say, okay, now everybody, and remember even before the opening of schools, it was mooted that the ones who went to school, the class 8s and the form 4s, would remain back as the others go to school. And then suddenly all of them have go to school. That's
Indeed.
a stressor.
Yeah, on 20th January, I'm told that clip is ready. Education CS championed the reintroduction of caning in schools to curb rising incidents of unrest and indiscipline in cases. Let's first listen into what the CS had to say on 28th of January in Kisii County.
Capital punishment will be reintroduced back in schools as long as it is properly used. For the female child, you shall use the hand, extended hand. For the boy child, the very well formed backside. And the stick to be used should be standardized so that the child can, the idea is to inflict a bit of pain so that the child can know this one is a no-go.
That is Education CS Professor George Magoha on 28th of January, talking about the ministry could rethink about introduction of caning in schools to curb the rising cases of indiscipline in schools. But of course, it was met with a mixed concoction of solutions. Others supporting and others, of course, saying that was outlawed in 2001. But when we rope in the issue of drug abuse, we've seen violent students and even not only students, we've seen people violent because of using drugs. And now we are talking about the reintroduction of corporal punishment in schools when we also have a problem. We have a report that shows that a lot of school-going children are on drugs. Would that be a very strong conclusion of trouble?
Oh, thank you for that. I would not really say that most students are actually on drugs.
A lot.
They are at risk.
Yes.
They are at risk, but they are not using. Because even when you look at the survey, is actually not reflecting that most of them. And you know, again, when you talk about most, then that is the message that the young people also get, that everybody is using. So if everybody is using, I want to be part of everybody. And you see, that also drives. But in actual sense, most children are not using drugs and have never even tried. So the message that we should be, you know, looking at even the positive end, that so many are not using. You know, why are we focusing on the ones that are using, whereas so many of us are not using? You know, that is likely to also move them to the other end. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that we do not have children who are using. Now, when you combine you know, caning as a way of changing behavior, it really doesn't. Yeah, there is no study that has shown that that when you actually cane people, then that will actually change the behavior. Because what is it that is driving that behavior? And it is the one that should help to inform what can be corrected. So when you see aggression, you see anger, it could be as a result of something else. So it's about finding what are the underlying issues, so that then you can see what you see may not be exactly what you get, because underlying issues could be there are challenges. Like we've said, schools have suddenly opened. Then you say KCSE and KCPE will be in March, and I have not been looking at my books. You know, that is likely to bring a lot of anxiety in the children. Then the home environment, remember, has no structure compared to the school. So if you look at the school environment, you know, you arrive in school at this time, there is a whole schedule that runs through until you go to sleep. Now, when you look at the home environment, probably that was not there. So that sudden change also has its own effect. So caning would not resolve those issues. Yeah.
Indeed, and a very comprehensive report on how the drug status and substance abuse among primary schools pupils in Kenya is a comprehensive. So I would love us to now get deeper into this. But in case you just joined us, this is Newscheck, and today we are looking at the school's unrest, and of course NACADA has come out guns blazing, talking about students as young as primary school kids being not only users and also peddlers. And I'm joined by Susan Maua, who is a drug prevention specialist, and she is in charge of the Department of Public Education and Advocacy. Perhaps back to our discussion. You did a survey that was released in 2019, and this has formed basis for our discussion today, that kids as young as primary going, not only are they using, but also some of them have become peddlers, and there are a number of factors that have brought about the situation in the country, and especially now that we have so many student unrest in schools, and especially this year. But before we do that, let's have the clip where, of course, NACADA gave the figures as they are right now.
of unrest among learners, the National Authority for the Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse, NACADA, says drug abuse among school-going children is to blame for the menace. In a national survey carried out in June 2018 on the status of drugs and substance abuse among primary school pupils in Kenya, it emerged that 20.2% of primary school pupils have ever used at least one drug or substance of abuse in their lifetime. The survey shows 16.9% of primary school pupils are currently using at least one drug or substance of abuse. It further reveals that 3.2% of primary school pupils are currently using tobacco, 2.6% using alcohol, while 2.3% are currently using miraa. According to NACADA, the common sources of drug and substance of abuse mentioned by students include kiosks or shops near school, which compose 28.6%, bars near schools at 25.7%, friends at 19.3%, school workers at 13.6%, while 13.7% said they buy the drugs from their fellows. In a statement signed by the board chair, Professor Mabel Imbuga, NACADA called for a comprehensive collaborative approach to arrest the unwanted emerging trend of arrest in learning institutions.
That is a survey done by NACADA, and we would like to delve deeper into that to understand the situation because as the situation is right now, it's not headed in the right direction. Perhaps you can touch on the NACADA report.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So the NACADA report actually tells us what is it that is happening in the schools, and it's not just a report, but it is meant to raise the awareness and also come up with solutions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that we do not bury our heads in the sand and think that the school environment is entirely safe for the children. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, like during the COVID period, again, you know, parents were wondering when the schools will open. When will they open so that they get out of our way? But then you find that in the school environment, mm-hmm. it is what happens at home that comes to the school environment, as shown by the study, mm-hmm. because like I mentioned earlier, the initiation, a great percentage of initiation of drug use begins at home. The source of the drugs, other than from the vendors, food vendors and kiosks near schools and from friends or those who, you know, could be bringing in so that they sell, you find that even parents contribute to that. Siblings are also contributors to even not just the initiation but continued use. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that means that with that kind of knowledge, mm-hmm. or with the statistics, it helps to inform what then can we do next. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And from the report, I see there could be students that are not using the drugs but are peddling. This mm-hmm. is a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, sure. If they're there, it's a ticking time bomb. And you know that this would be a hidden activity. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be a hidden activity because the other thing that we also found out, sometimes they could be going out of mm-hmm. school and coming back. Yes. Maybe because they are sick, or it's an excuse to go out, you know, home for one reason or the other, mm-hmm. and then that's an opportunity to sneak in something. Mm-hmm. When schools open, there is always inspection. But you see, there are also various ways of hiding this. You know, teachers are not investigators. Yes. So they can only do so much in terms of checking. Mm-hmm. So I remember from some of our engagements with the teachers, mm-hmm. what we learned as they do, you know, teachers do inspection at the gate. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But mm-hmm. there are other ways in which these drugs can come in. For example, in the books, you know, we like to tell students to cover their books very nicely, so the books will be covered well. But then between the cover yes. and the top of the book, that is a space where, you know, if it is, for example, cannabis or even cigarettes can be put there. So there are many ways, and in one situation it was very interesting. A teacher shared that you are inspecting But what the student has done is to keep the drug in the hand. Yeah, so you see, I will be raising my hands up. You are checking, when in actual sense it is here.
It's right there.
It's right there. Sight. It's right there in plain sight. So again, it means that whereas it is good to do the inspections, and inspections are recommended, even by NACADA, inspections need to be done, but that is not all. There's a lot more that also needs to be done to be able to just address that. Because, you know, a human being is such that when you say don't do this, it's like they've had the opposite. And especially Kenyans, if you say do not go and drink between this time and this time, it's like they've had, I need to get something. Yes. So that I can use it, just to see what you will do. It happens even with the children. If you come up with rules, they also need to understand why the rules are there. Then they will also become part and parcel of addressing that. Because if they are students who are peddling, they know who they are. So how do you make it possible for them to be able to report? If it is in a punitive way, then nobody will report. But if you make it in a situation that they would also be able to report such kind of situations, then you're likely to see an improvement in terms of drugs coming into schools. But remember, we also have the food vendors, as the study has also shown, the kiosks that next to schools.
Yes.
When you have co-curricular activities like music or sports, or you have many students gathering at one point, it also becomes an opportunity for peddlers to also bring in drugs. Because if you have, let's say, music festivals or any of those activities, usually have people who come in to sell mahamri, juices. Those are actually the people who also bring in drugs. And that came from the survey. Remember, the respondents were students. So it means that they are actually telling you, these are the channels. So it means that if you're going to intervene, then you need to do something. So that take away the food vendors. If it is the canteen, the school canteen, they could be selling bread or they could be selling sweet, but there is a lot more they can also put in there. So it becomes important that even vetting of those who run the canteens and so on could also help to take out the drugs in the schools.
And still on the same, as we take a break, I remember there was a directive that all pubs or alcohol selling, either wines and spirits, that are 300 meters, they should be 300 meters from any learning institution, but we haven't witnessed that, and especially here in Nairobi. You see a school and a club, you see a school and a club. What happened to that directive?
Well, the directive is still there.
Did it help? Because 300 meters?
Oh, sure. You know, it wasn't just put there. It's actually something that should be enforced. And I know we received reports also about such kind of situations. And I would also want to say that in addition to the findings which we shared with Ministry of Education, we also came up with the ways of addressing this. And so it means that when the guidelines are enforced, sometimes, you know, the people responsible may not be aware. They may not be aware. Because if a school, sometimes, you know, it is the school that is being put up where they are already drinking joints. So it means that probably it is the drinking outlets that should be raising the red flag that you cannot have a school next to this. So that if a school, they also see that somebody is coming up with a drinking place or an alcohol selling place, then they should be able to raise the flag. But we have received some of those complaints, and I believe action is also taken on that.
Indeed. This is Newscheck, and today we are looking at drug and substance abuse, and especially in schools, in the wake of schools unrest and violence that has not been witnessed for a while in the country. And of course, I would love your feedback. Remember, we are live on all our social media platform. I can see Nyakwar Oriko Nyangi, you're watching. Kevin Mutonu, you're watching from Bomet. Watching from Kendube is Onanda Mark Onanda. Oremanga Gideon, you're also following. So is Zianda Zibwa. And also Alex Juma. Keep them coming. You have a question, suggestion, or even a comment. Kindly don't keep it, just send it so that we can be in tandem with this conversation. But for now, we are taking a short, quick break. We will get deeper into this to understand why we are having these cases and how we can be able to do away with drugs when it comes to our school-going children. Let's take that break. Welcome back, and thanks for keeping me company. Indeed, it is a Newscheck, and today we are looking at schools unrest, and of course in the wake of NACADA releasing a report and showing that our students are using drugs and others are even peddling. Where have we gone wrong? What can be done to arrest the situation? Because looking at the last 1 month, over 20 schools have been closed. Some are blamed it on of course, drug abuse. Some have blamed it on perhaps the expectations of exam, and others have talked about poor parenting being one of the reasons that are bringing up these cases. But today we specifically are looking at how drug abuse is actually playing a major part or a major role in the schools unrest as we speak. And of course, I'm joined by Susan Maua, who is a drugs prevention specialist and in charge of the Department of Public Education and Advocacy at NACADA. And before the break, we were looking at, of course, peddlers and selling drugs and institutions of learning that are close to entertainment joints. But also, according to a report, cigarettes, alcohol, Mira were mentioned as the drugs that most students abuse or are using. I couldn't help but notice the bang was not there, or cannabis sativa, or weed as it's called in the streets. Yeah. It wasn't in the report.
It is actually in the report. Yeah, it's just that probably in terms of putting which ones are most abused, then you will find that alcohol, tobacco. Number 2 is actually prescription drugs.
Number 2 is
prescription medicine. Yes, prescription medicine. So you have alcohol, you have prescription drugs, then you have Mira, you have tobacco. So cannabis is actually number 5. Okay. But now when it comes to illegal substances, then that is where bang now comes as number 1. Yeah. And
from your survey, where do they get these drugs from? I remember you mentioned something about at home, perhaps even from very close relatives, even family members.
Yeah, so home environment, which should essentially be a protective factor, has become a risk factor. Because remember, during the COVID period, bars were closed. And so it means that anybody who was drinking in the bars then would do that at home. At some point, they said, oh, you cannot drink it, but you can do it at home. Yes. And of course, as NACADA, we also made a statement during that time that drinking at home displays or models a behavior that you would not want repeated in your own children. It's not about what you say, but it's about what you do. Because you know that when people drink, in the beginning, they are very civilized people. Yes. But as time progresses, then you find that things change, even their behavior. Whatever they say is going to even impact on the children. So that is why you find that now the home environment has become a risk factor. If you look at that survey, it's actually saying 48.5% of initiation of drug use happened at home. during the holidays. So it means that that home environment, which should have helped the children so that they know that alcohol and even drugs are bad, is not good for children, and so on, that is not the case. And therefore, that is why you're saying that parenting has also been raised as one of the issues that are contributing. Because you may say that they should not use, but why are you using? In fact, the younger ones will ask you, we take tea together,
yes,
we eat ugali together, we do, even when we have parties, we drink soda together. So why am I not drinking this one?
Yes.
Yeah, so they would also want to taste that. Yeah, and you know, if you leave it there, they will be observing what you're doing, and then they will also try it out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And talking about the institution of the family being a contributing factor, let me tie it with what Kupet was advising the Ministry of Education a couple of days ago. They were talking about abolishing boarding schools so that the kids can have at least a family institution where the parent can be able to monitor the progress of the student. But from what you've said, that will also bring another factor of the fact that the parents are using perhaps alcohol or cigarettes, so the kids will actually have a better place to do that. But can it address perhaps the unrest that we have in schools?
I think to some extent it would. To some extent it would, because it means then the school will focus on their core business, which is impacting or delivering the curriculum. Because you see, like even now, you know, teachers are expected to deliver two-year curricula in 1 year. Yeah, that also puts a lot of pressure. So if probably they are at home, or when they leave school, then the parents can supervise homework. They can also see what else they can do for their children rather than being away from them. And again, if you look at the school unrests, which part is usually burnt? It's the dormitories.
Yes.
So
that they may go home.
Yes, so that they go home. Now suppose, and you've not had a situation where the children burn home so that they can go to school.
Yes.
Yeah. So
unfortunately, us as the parents, we bear the greatest.
Yes. Yeah. You bear the cost, because it is your own child's bad behavior that then you talk about it. But you will find that probably even as they were going to school, I know the challenge of raising fees for parents was also there. But you'll find that out of the parents, I believe none of them even discussed the issues of, you have been away, my child. I know it is going to be difficult to adjust back to school. I'm sure that conversation was not held. Yeah, it's like, okay, go to school. And then, you know, the expectations from the parents are also very high. You need to do well, you need to pass. So like today, you're talking about mass failures. You see, that is what is in the headlines in the newspapers, is talking about mass failures. How does that also impact on the children? Because they're likely to say, okay, so we are all failing. Then there is no point of even doing anything. Yeah, what's the point when we are going to fail? So that is the message that they would get. How about encouraging them so that, you know, even if it were you, shifting from no work, like, you know, even for others, we were working from home.
Yes.
Now, when you shift from working from home to actually be in the office by 8 a.m., it's not easy.
Yes.
And then you will ask yourself, will I last until 5 p.m.? Now, when the children go to school, they are supposed to be there. In boarding schools, do you know what time they wake up?
Very early, I can tell.
4:30 a.m. They're supposed to be in class.
Yeah.
4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. And you'll find these learners are in class until maybe even 10:30. And you know, right now with the restrictions, even the co-curricular activities are suspended. So you are likely to see more of this rather than less, because there is nowhere to also release the pressure. So you see, physical education,
yes,
should be some of the things that they should do. Yeah.
Of course, all stakeholders are working round the clock to ensure that we find a lasting solution. You've pointed out very well that, and we have seen also in clips that, and all those schools that have been burnt, that the first casualty is usually the dormitories. I'll tell you for a fact, because I've also passed through the 844 system, and mostly all the crimes are done either at the toilets or in the dormitories at night or during the day. Do you think perhaps installation of CCTV cameras can be able to help as we wait for lasting solutions? Now, drugs aside, can it actually try and perhaps reduce the incidences that we are having? Because I can tell you for a fact that these kids do hide there where they want to perpetuate a crime, including usage of drugs.
Well, I know there are some schools that have introduced the CCTV, and it's got to be linked to an intervention. You know, again, when you talk of CCTVs, it's like having drug testing in schools.
Yes.
You know, the testing and the CCTV will not be an intervention unless it is linked to something else that then can address. Because what are the children's fears? Why are they doing this? Yeah, why are they doing this? So that then you also intervene in terms of even speaking with them, not at them. You know, most of the time we speak at them, and that is exactly what we are doing right now, because
speaking at them as opposed to speaking to them.
Yes, because in as much as we are talking about the unrest in schools, we haven't heard the voices of the children themselves. Yeah, so what is it that is causing this? You know, if you hear from them, then you'd know what you're addressing. But as adults, we are likely to come up with solutions which may not help. So to an extent, the CCTV may help, but you should be asking yourself, what next after that? Yeah, you know, such kind of interventions, we've talked of drug testing again. Yes. Not an intervention, unless it is linked to a real intervention.
Indeed, and we will be looking at that, because we could have some random testing which actually could perhaps deter some of the students, or even actually, as you've said, if it's attached to something, to a lasting solution, then we could be able to iron out that. But we are discussing matter schools unrest, and we are hooking them to the usage of drugs in the country. And of course, I'm joined by Susan Maua, who is a drugs prevention specialist, and also she is in charge of the Department of Public Education and Advocacy. Madam, before we went for that presser by the health workers in Mombasa, we're talking about, we just touched on random testing. I do remember during my days in high school, we were having random checks for, of course, contrabands. Okay, back then there were no phones, of course, drugs, and also food. But do you think random testing, and perhaps random, and especially in boarding schools, could help? And you had talked about not only testing, we need to be having another solution after that. So after testing, what?
Okay, thank you. So I would want to emphasize that drug testing is not an intervention. Yeah, I know many times we feel like if we do testing, then it's going to be a deterrence. They are, you know, when you look at drug testing, you are, you know, taking samples. It could be urine, it could be blood, it could even be hair, so that you are checking the, you know, components of drugs that could be, that somebody may have used. So the controversy with the testing is that if, let's say, they had taken alcohol, you know, how long does alcohol take in the body? Yes. So by the time you are testing, you will find it's not there. That doesn't mean that the child did not use alcohol. Yes. So you see, if you went by testing, and I've interacted with students that have been sent home to go and undergo drug testing. And it's interesting that if you take a history of what happened, you look at the letter from the school. First of all, the letter from the school says you go for drug testing and bring the results. So the question you'll be asking yourself, what does the school want to do with the results? But fortunately, in the places where they do the testing, like Kenyatta National Hospital or at the government chemist, they will not just test and then give you the results. The student actually goes through counseling, so that even when the results are back, they discuss the results of the test with the counselor before they actually release to school. You know, a letter is written, because if they use alcohol, which let's say happened over the weekend, as you look at the survey again, when are drugs likely to be used?
Yes.
Over the weekend,
yes,
during entertainments. So if it happened over the weekend, and then you send this child, even if it's on Monday,
yes,
to go for testing, and what they used was alcohol, you won't find anything. And so they will bring a test that shows negative. So what next? It does not deter. In fact, the learner sees, oh, you can escape this. Yeah?
Yes,
you can escape this. Now, when it comes to a substance like bang, bang, you know, the active ingredient, THC, is sticky. So it means it stays in the system for much longer. So 30 days from the last time of use, somebody can still test positive. So if you tested them and it is a past use, it is going to reflect. And I've seen a situation where a student then, even after going through counseling, the results showed that it is negative, it is positive. So the school says, go back home until it clears out of your system. Remember, it takes longer to clear out of the system. So, you know, sometimes the teachers think that, you know, it can be washed out of your system. The other thing that learners will also do, because they know that for you to detoxify, including like if it is cannabis, you drink a lot of water. Yeah, so if they are sent home, and again schools have a tendency of sending them home on Friday, they will drink a lot of water over the weekend, so that when they go for the test on Monday, if it is negative, does that mean that the child was not using? It doesn't. So that is why drug testing as a standalone is not an intervention. And it has been used to exploit parents also. Yeah? So that you have people who want to do testing to just get money. But then it doesn't help the situation. So one of the things that we have recommended, even in the guidelines that I had mentioned to you, is that it needs to be linked to an intervention, so that if there is counseling, you deal with the underlying issues. What is presenting is their drug use. They could have been curious, or maybe a friend was using and they say, oh, you try. Pressure. Yeah, peer pressure. You know, the maths is difficult. There's a lot of pressure to do schoolwork, and then a friend tells him, this is the one that will help you. You are going to study for long. In fact, it makes you sharp. Then the child is going to use. It's only that what they cannot conceptualize is the negative effects that it will have on you. So it's got to be linked to an intervention. As a standalone, it doesn't help. Many times people think it will deter. In actual sense, it really doesn't. Take, for example, in the case of trafficking. Those who traffic drugs to China, for example, you know very well that in China, if you found it's a death sentence, has it deterred them from ingesting? Because they think that if I just manage to take it through, the price at the end is the millions that I will get. So that is why in itself it is not a deterrent. It has to be linked to other interventions that will help to address the challenges that the students have.
And NACADA had called for a comprehensive and collaborative approach to arrest the rising and emerging trends of student banning schools. We've seen others actually beating up students. Do you think, as teachers, do you think perhaps access to the money they have, perhaps by parents or wherever they get the money from, is another thing that is leading to the easy access to these drugs? Cigarettes are easily accessible. To have money, yes. Alcohol, bangi, miraa, Do you think perhaps it can? Because I remember when I was in the early 90s, when I was in boarding school, I was being given 50 shillings as pocket money, and I had to deposit it with the bazaar. Is it the bazaar? The bazaar. And I was only to get that money at the end of the term, or when there was an emergency. Of course, there were not emergencies that would require the usage of money, because the school would have taken care of that. Do you think that access to money is really another contributing factor?
From the secondary school survey,
yes,
it actually shows that it's a factor.
The pocket money.
Too much pocket money that parents give. Yeah. So if it is a boarding school, you already paid fees, and the food is provided, and then you find somebody gives a child like 5,000 shillings. You know, that is somebody else's salary out here.
Yes.
But now you give the child, you have also bought them everything, but you have given them 5,000. What do they need this money for? So then it becomes, now you see where the biashara ones come in. The ones who figure out they are people with money.
Yes.
So I can start a business where I'm bringing in what they need. Yeah. So those are part of the reasons why also drug selling also creeped into the schools, because of the amount of money that parents give. So it is a contributory factor. And if they don't have, they can even steal from others.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, the Ministry of Education officials and the representatives of religious organizations were to draft a policy that will see chaplains, counselors be more or less like how each and every school has a school nurse. And now they will be having perhaps a chaplain, because we've even seen a lot of schools are sponsored by a lot of churches, or supported by a lot of churches. Perhaps can this really help address the issue? Because looking at some of the high-end institutions of learning that we have in the country, we see they have either a chaplain, they have a counselor, and we haven't had any of the high-end schools being banned. Can it help?
Yes, yes, for sure it helps. In fact, the chaplaincy is a good thing, in the sense that, you know, teachers, the challenge we have with guidance and counseling is that first and foremost, the teacher is hired by Teacher Service Commission, and the Teacher Service Commission will tell you this teacher is supposed to teach these subjects. So they are not, what they are doing in guidance and counseling is an aside. Yeah. So the dual role of being a teacher and also a counselor also has its own challenges, because if I am your maths teacher, when I stand in front of you, helping you to understand the maths and so on, is going to be a totally different, you know, the kind of hat I wear at that point is very different from now when I switch into this role of being a counselor, where there is unconditional positive regard. I will take you as you are, I am ready to listen, but remember, you did not finish my homework. Yeah. So you see, there is already a conflict.
Of course,
yes, there's a conflict.
There's a bridge.
There's a conflict in terms of those roles.
Yes.
So having counselors in schools who would actually be able to identify this, even if they cannot afford one counselor per school, even in a zone. Yeah, having counselor that then can, you know, cover a number of schools, I think would go a long way in addressing this, because then you have somebody who looks at the students' issues without all these others. Because if you are also a parent, you're a teacher, you're the counselor, all these hats, when you wear them together, you're likely to have a conflict. That is why even as a counselor, you cannot counsel your own child.
Yes.
Yeah, you would need somebody else to do that, because already you are emotionally involved with the person. So chaplaincy and even counseling would go a long way. In fact, when corporal punishment was banned, it was supposed to, guidance and counseling was supposed to take over.
Yes.
But that has not been the case, because sometimes even the people who are in charge of that department are not even trained. Are not even trained counselors. So they are simply holding the position. And you'll find that in most cases, they are women, happily married. I don't know how you define happily married, but it's like those are some of the characteristics that are sought. So that if you are a single person, you know, the school would actually not front you as a guidance and counseling. teacher, even though you may be trained and you have the skills. So you see, if you have people who are trained, not just holding the position, it's a requirement, so probably say, oh, so-and-so will be in charge of guidance and counseling, but the person is not trained. So that does not help. But if we have functional guidance and counseling departments, it would actually go a long way in addressing the issues, not just alcohol and drug use, but problem behavior and all the challenges, because sometimes it is another problem and then they are using alcohol or drugs to self-medicate. Yeah. So it is only somebody who is trained that would be able to identify this and see how do we help this.
Indeed.
Yes.
And perhaps there's a need for psychoeducation and stress management training that should be done to students, because some of the reasons that these students are turning to their schools and banning them is because of stress management or stress coping. Do you think if we can step up that and also step up education on drug abuse in our schools, we can be able at least to tame what we're having now?
Yeah, and that is true. And again, if you look at the competency-based curriculum,
yes,
it actually factors all these things in. Yeah. So probably if we reach at that point where the focus is less on academic, because you see right now there's a lot of pressure in terms of academic performance, even if you cannot manage. Remember, there are some schools who decide physics is going to be compulsory, even if you have no capacity to do the physics.
Yes.
So again, even the choices of subjects. But again, if you look at CBC, it takes care of skills. The skills, it also provides education on alcohol and drugs at the level of the learners. And so it would address many of these issues. Yeah. Right now, you know, the focus is academic. You need to pass. You need to do this. So if you don't have the capacity, you are in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, in some schools, they read in the assembly. They read the top students and the bottom.
Yeah.
And you are always at the bottom. How does that boost your esteem when you are always at the bottom?
Indeed. So actually, pressure for success is a contributing factor. I do remember in college, we've seen students chewing mirror so that they can stay awake and more awake and concentrate on reading, or even using cold water. I remember our days back using cold water, and then you put your legs or put something cold behind your head. Which
gets warm in a short while.
Yeah, yes. That pressure actually to perform is a contributing factor towards somebody thinking about using something that maybe will make his body a little bit more active, and which of course is drugs, or even prescription drugs, as you talked about.
Yeah, and you know what drives young people's use of drugs is actually the perception. The perception of harm. You know, the perception of harm is low. So their perception of what they will achieve out of it, it will help you to study for long. It will increase your attention. That is why they will do prescription drugs. You know, then this will boost your confidence. Yes. You know, it is the perception that actually drives them into use. So that is why even for, you know, high schoolers, you'd want to find out what are their perceptions, what are these myths, because these myths are the ones that will, even if you provide them with all this information, it is the other one that they will do. Because look at even adults, we do that. Yeah, during COVID, we figured out if sanitizers have alcohol, I can drink alcohol and sanitize from inside out.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, nobody say that, but then you figure out, but then you find people who take it seriously, and then they think this is it. So even as the Ministry of Health is saying that, you know, sanitizer, you should not drink sanitizer and so on, the one that they are likely to do is what is harmful, but it is the perception that it is going to solve my issue that makes them use. Yeah.
Yes,
so,
and you've done a lot of work on advocacy, and I remember CS Magoha talking about if a student bans, or those students who are found guilty of banning their schools should not first be admitted to any other school, and secondly, of course, they will not get their certificate of good conduct from the DCI. Do you think such kind of measures could actually deter some of the students from doing whatever they are doing now?
Yes, it would be a deterrence, but again,
an extreme one, I think.
It's an extreme one, but at the same time, if somebody has a mental illness, for example, you know, during curfew, the people who would be caught are the drunkards, for example, because when somebody is intoxicated, they have no sense of time. So even when you say curfew is 7 p.m., they have no idea, you know, what curfew, what time are you talking about? So you see, the person cannot relate with that kind of situation. So even when you say they will not be able to get a certificate of good conduct,
or being admitted to another school.
What is certificate of good conduct from the child's perspective? You know, they can't relate with it now. Yes. They cannot relate with it now. And sometimes they want to ban the school or do something so that they can be sent away because they don't want this school.
Yes.
Yeah, those are other contributing factors. So if let's say it is such that you cannot go to another school, maybe. But you may find that this particular learner probably did not even want to go to school. So even when you say you will not go to school,
it's a solution for them.
It's a solution for them.
Yes.
Yeah, for their case, it is a solution. So it's not a one size fits all, because there are many things that need to be done. So even because arson is a criminal activity.
Yes.
Yeah, that does not, even if you are a child, it doesn't take away the fact that arson is a criminal activity. So they need to be aware of even those consequences. And I've seen schools where they actually indicate that all these are criminal activities and so on. I think it came from DCI, so that they also get to know that there is that tendency that something will happen to you. But we also know that there are also problems that more often than not you're going to see at that age, particularly if they are mental illnesses. They can contribute to that. So that's why I'm saying it's not a one-size-fits-all. If you have guidance and counseling, a functional one, then early identification of such kind of situations may be done so that the child gets, gets an intervention or gets help at the earliest opportunity. If they have started using drugs, it doesn't mean that if they've started using, they're dependent. Yeah. But if they are dependent, what help can they get? So even sending them away from school, because that has also happened, if you're found using drugs, then you're going to be expelled. You are expelled, you go to another school, because remember, there are also private ones. There are all these others that are found on the third floor of some buildings and so on. Yeah. They will take the child in. Yeah. So it's really not a one solution, but when you have collaboration of various stakeholders, it will help to also curb not just the drug use, but also all these other activities that come with it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
You are watching Newscheck, and we are looking at drug usage, and especially when it comes to students. Of course, NACADA releasing a report and talking about, indeed, they are using these drugs. But when we come back, we'll be talking about why is it that we are not hearing about high-end schools or a lot of private schools having unrest, or even a single one being banned, and what lessons can perhaps the management of public schools perhaps borrow a leaf from them, so that because they are still using high-end schools, they are using, but what we are seeing from the private schools and the public schools is quite different. Let's first of all take that quick break, then we'll be right back. Welcome back. We are glad you're watching, and today on Newscheck we are looking at matters drugs when it comes to students. We've seen a lot of unrest, we've seen a lot of schools getting banned, and the trend just keep going and going. Just slightly over a month since schools were opened, we have witnessed over 20 schools being banned or destroyed, and students have had to go back home. And Susan Maua, who is from NACADA, she's a drug prevention specialist, and she's the head of public education and advocacy department at NACADA. Before the break, we were talking about why is it that we are having a drug problem in both private and public institutions, but we are not seeing unrest in private schools and the group of schools. We are not seeing that, but we still have a drug problem in the same school.
Okay, there are actually many reasons that happens. First of all, is even the size of classes. You find the numbers are much lower compared to public schools. There is a lot more commitment also because of a positive school climate. Yeah, so if you maintain a positive school climate where learners feel that they belong and also want to, get something better out of their lives, that is also there. And you will be surprised that most of the teachers, even in public schools, will be taking their children to private schools. Then there is the guidance and counseling department. They are actually functional. So you'll find those schools will employ somebody who is trained in guidance and counseling. So you will find somebody who does that. In addition to that, you'll find schools also have what we call the parent-teacher conferences, so that on a one-on-one, you can also discuss academics. Yeah, because in the school, the key thing is academics. So you will be discussing academics, but then you are also able to bring out what else the child is experiencing. So those would actually contribute. So again, if they identify some of those cases that maybe they would want to expel, they also do. They also do exclude learners from their schools if they find that their behavior may impact negatively on the others. Yeah. So there are many factors that also contribute to this.
Looking at the narcotics and the substance laws we have in the country, of course, some of them have been tweaked a little, like the advertising, alcohol, cigarettes, of course, all the advertisement on television and radio were pulled down. And looking at the laws that we have the alcohol ones. You cannot advertise during watershed. You have to wait for watershed hours. Can we do something to actually deter what our kids are seeing and aspiring to use? Because you did say that someone wants to experiment. How does it taste? How does it feel? Can it deter some of the students, if not all, from actually engaging in drugs? Because we are seeing them everywhere. On billboards, we can see alcohol. At home, we can see those advertisements past the hours. And we know very well our kids are very smart nowadays. They are not sleeping early. Yes.
And parents also have given them smartphones.
Yes.
So you see, with the smartphones, you don't even need to watch the regular media, because just go to Twitter, you'll see, or even Facebook or Instagram, any of those sites, you'll be able to get the advertisement. So you'll find they have moved from, if it is more stringent in this area, then they move to. And remember, there's also alcohol sale online.
Yes.
And again, it doesn't also verify. It doesn't verify the age. So it means that they can still, remember, this is coupled with having a lot of money. You have money, you have the means to get it, and it will be delivered where you are. So you see that then also will contribute. But there is still the component of the parenting. Does your child really need a phone?
Yes.
Primary school, high school, does your child really need a phone? that is a question that you should be asking yourself. How do you regulate use? How would you be able to identify that your child is not engaged even in criminal activity? You know, cyberbullying is there. There are all these bad things that also come from being able to access without parental control. So it's also important that parents also think in terms of how do you regulate screen time. And the screen time, even for younger ones, things like cartoons. You know, today's cartoons are very different from what you saw in the yesteryears. So the message is sent in a very subtle way. Look at even the music that the young people would want to watch. If you look at the videos, cannabis is illegal, but when you see the musician or those who are there,
and then there are memes. There's a lot of how do we regulate
with big cigarettes? You know, the big cigarette is not tobacco.
Yes.
Yeah. So in a subtle way, it is also being shown. So in as much as you are doing this, then there is something else. And you know that the Kenya film classification have also been very keen, and especially with content. You know that Dr. Mutua has been bringing out, you know, the moral cop. People call him the moral cop, but you see, he's always looking at those things and likely to bring out that this video, you know, the content and so on. Yeah. So advertisement will always be done in a subtle way. So you find that as NACADA, we've also been supporting schools, some of the schools, not all, to do a life skills program. And you know, in this life skills program, part of what is discussed is advertisement. Yeah, how are you, what does advertisement do, and how do they do it in such a way that it makes you want to do exactly what they are, as they are advertising a product. Because even when you look at advertisements for alcohol, there is no one time they are ever going to show the negative effects. It will, and it said you are not supposed to use young people, but they will always get somebody and who may be, first of all, is an icon, and then also is spruced up to look young.
Yeah.
So you see, then the message still gets there.
Yes.
So if I would want to associate with so and so is doing this, so and so is my icon, then I would also want to be like that. So this is a subtle way. So it is only through education that they get to know what is it the advert is doing. Yeah. What kind of you know, how well are they taking you for a ride, yeah, in terms of what the product that they are selling. And it's not just alcohol, but any product. You know, they say will make your skin smooth and so on.
Yeah.
Does it ever happen? They will take somebody with no problem in terms of that skin. So
it's safe to say that we as a society, we are really also contributing to driving our kids into usage of drugs. Looking at, there's a song that was released 1 or 2 months ago by a boy who is in high school. But in the song, he's talking about alcohol, come with cannabis, we party, come with some young ladies, we party. Could we be pushing also our kids, and then we sit down and say our kids are engaging in drugs and we have participated in that? And as you put it right, looking at advertisement that we have, looking at alcohol, and for example, you can see that alcohol should not be sold to persons under 18 years. It's quite tiny, and actually on the advertisement, it's the last thing. But the big celebrities there, the name of the alcohol is so bolded and so big. So as a society, are we playing a part in pushing our kids into usage of drugs and then later on coming to castigate them?
You know, when they put that small note about excessive alcohol consumption,
nothing else
should not be sold to persons, it's because it's a requirement.
Yeah, not actually what they want.
Yeah, that is not what they would want. It's a requirement. So that is why. They had an option,
it wouldn't be there.
Oh, they would not be there. And you know, the way the tobacco manufacturers have had a long, you know, drawn battle with you know, even the packaging, because if you know, even with tobacco, they say on the pack you are supposed to indicate the harmful effects. Yeah, and this is supposed to be in pictorial. Yes. So you can see it will give you cancer, it will do this and this. So you can imagine having your product and then you are telling people that this is what it will do. That is not what they would want. So if they do, it is because of a requirement. But in actual sense, as a society, we are contributing. Parties. Yes. Parties are only complete with
alcohol,
yeah,
as cigarettes, perhaps mirror, and perhaps even cannabis.
Yeah. So the message, you know, so can you have a party which is alcohol-free? Yeah. What kind of message? Even in the workplaces, we have that. They talk about, oh, we shall have a party and there will be drinks. If it is a party, why do you need to emphasize that there will be drinks? Yeah. So again, when, as a society, this is how we package Friday, Furahi Day, and through into the weekend. This is how it is done. So even the young people know this is how it is done. So it is not complete. So how do we reverse that so that you can still stay cool without taking drugs? You can still enjoy all these things without. Yeah. So the bottom line is looking at what is the message, yeah, in looking at what your learners or what even your children are able to see. What is the message that they are getting there? So that actually falls under parenting programs, because when you talk of parenting programs, we also talk about reduced screen time. And if there is a particular program they like to watch, why don't you also spend some time and say, what is it that is, you know, hooking my child into this, so that then you see what is it that it's coming up here. You can you remember the story of the young man who killed the family, and yes, he talks of a movie. Yeah, so you see, even those can contribute, because what is it that is that makes them not want to miss this particular program? It would just be important to watch and then let them know. Remember that these are people who are acting. Yeah, they are at work. This is not the real life. How do you separate reality from what is being acted? Yeah. So again, for parents, it still falls with the parents, because you see now schools do not have TVs. Although you see there are some schools that banned their
because of entertainment.
Because entertainment was removed. Yeah. And
a lot of people are talking about some of the issues that are contributing, just stress and management of schools. Okay, away from that, let's go back to NACADA now. You are the head of the Public Education and Advocacy Department. Do you have some campaigns? Because looking at this report, it's quite disturbing. So are you having campaigns that perhaps can be able to sensitize our young boys and girls to stop using these drugs? Or if somebody is hooked, how that student can be helped, as opposed to just raining blows and kicks on the kid?
Thank you. Now, as NACADA, we have a helpline, which is toll-free, 1192. So anybody can call and actually speak to a counselor. So that is already an intervention that there in terms of those who need to speak to somebody. How do I get out of drugs? Now, from the report, you will find that we identified the risk factors. Remember, we said the home environment is a risk factor. So we've actually had campaigns around positive parenting. Yeah. So during COVID period, even in this particular studio, we talked about positive parenting. It is something that we are still doing. We didn't just do it at KBC, we also did in a number of vernacular stations. And after that, it is something that we continue to do. Even next week, we will be starting another one. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Another section of positive parenting, so that we can reach out to the parents, because they are the custodian of the children. The ones in boarding schools, right now, it is the teachers. So it means that we also have programs that are targeting the school environment. So for parents, we did not just have this positive parenting, but we have also developed content. And I have one here, the Parents' Guide to Alcohol and Drug Abuse. How do you hold conversations? You don't wait until they are in teenage, because now you will be quarreling, you will not be talking, you will not be having a conversation. You begin this conversation when they are still much younger, so that when they have all your attention, and you can point them in the right direction. So just having the conversation with them about drugs and medicines, it starts much early, from two years going upwards, so that this conversation is held until they get to, much older. So that is very key. So as NACADA, we do that. And then also for the young learners, we have also developed materials for various ages, from 6 to 8 years, 9 to 12 years.
Yes, actually, it's very interesting, and actually I would urge a lot of parents to read this, because it's step by step, 2 to 4 years. I can see we have 5 to 8 years, conversations with 9 to 12 years.
Yeah.
It's a step by step, and of course the riskiest place, 13 to 18, and of course how to control and of course reason with them. This is quite impressive, I should say.
So it's on our website. Yeah, it's on our website, so people can always get the materials on the website. Okay,
yeah, hold the thought. I've been talking about matters drug abuse in schools, and as you can see, NACADA has launched a lot of books to help parents, and especially in parenting at these difficult times. And as she has said, you can find all this in their website. Final word before we close.
Okay, so when we talk about the issues of alcohol and drugs, it's more than NACADA thing, because NACADA is responsible for coordination, but you're going to find that there are many other stakeholders. In this case, we have parents and guardians. Like I've said, we have a program which is for positive parenting, so that then even parents can improve their parenting and also help their children not to even introduce drug use, alcohol and drug use. And then for Ministry of Education, we are working in collaboration with Ministry of Education so that we can come up with guidelines. They are actually developed. So it is at the point of print, and then when they are launched, this is supposed to help schools address the issues of alcohol and drug abuse in the schools, because it's not just about the individual learners, but even the environment itself.
Yes.
So we can also address the school environment. So even for students, we have programs that with enough funding we'll also be able to upscale this, especially in collaboration with Ministry of Education. And I believe as people in government, there is a lot more that is going on to address the alcohol and drug abuse issue. And anybody who requires help and needs to talk to somebody, we have 1192 that they can call. Toll free. Toll free. Yes. So speak to a counselor and see how you can be helped. And also, we also have regional offices where somebody can reach us in the various areas.
Thank you. That is where we put a cap. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. We've been talking about drug abuse, and especially when it comes to our students, and have been speaking to Susan Maua, who is a drug prevention specialist, and she is the head of the Department of Public Education and Advocacy. In anything we do, let's always find a lasting solution.